It's a sort of surreal to meet like this, but then it's a sign of the times we live in. I just wanted to say that there's not a day that goes by without me thinking of Hari, and I'm sure that's so for all of us. And it's just the way he left, and it's been very difficult to reconcile with this sort of sudden void that I feel I need to keep talking to him with all of you, and through you maybe keep talking to him. I also wanted to say that today being Teachers' Day, I took the initiative of instituting a small prize in his name for the best undergraduate essay that would be written on contemporary issues. I thought it was one way where I could officially put my own sense of commitment to Hari. Ideally, I'd like to do something more for the department he served in. But given Hari's, very inclusive nature and this sort of cosmopolitan approach to everything, and because I've also been very impressed with the way my new students have been writing, I felt it just was right to sort of remember Hari and remember what Hari wrote about contemporary planning. I've been sharing that with them. So I just wanted to share that I sort of instituted this formally today, and it sort of kicked in from today. So I wanted to share that with you. I also wanted to say that this is really not structured. We just thought it would be nice to get, all of us together in one place since we can't physically meet. We could just chat, reminiscence, maybe think about Hari's work a little bit, think about his style, and think about his extraordinary generosity. And there are lots of younger people whom I know have been writing to me saying, Sir, ke khoob miss kori. So I thought this was a good way of just having a good old-fashioned adda. So I'm also saying that my Wi-Fi connection in Goa is a bit choppy. So I might flit in and out, not because I'll be physically in and out, but I might not share my screen all the time. So I've actually asked Indu, my daughter, who anyway was very, very fond of Hari Mama, to set up the Zoom meeting, and she might just say a few words and share a few slides that Tapati very kindly put together. And then I would actually ask Subhash Babu and PK to sort of start just chatting and beginning the Adda formally, as it were. So, to Indu.
Okay, hi everyone. Yeah, I don't remember a time when, I haven't known Hari Mama. I kind of have these vague childhood recollections of him sort of always being there. And even though, I haven't lived in Calcutta now for many years, I could sort of rely on going, each time I went back, I knew that I would see Hari Mama and Papumashi in Bingka. It was just part of a very normal routine. And one thing I have to say is, I don't think I ever came away from a conversation with Hari Mama without feeling that I'd learned something, I'd enjoyed myself, or it had been anything other than, the best possible use of my time that it could have been at that moment. Just because it was so fun, it was so informative, and he was, I think, probably the best conversationalist I've ever met. He was always, genuinely interested in what other people had to say. He engaged with them in a way that I have never seen from anyone else. And yeah, I mean, I think that sort of genuine interest and curiosity and willingness to engage it's so remarkable that yeah, it is something that I could count on. I have this experience very often when I start talking about my interests, particularly academic interests, and people say, "Oh God, you're being such a bore. I bore ko ishna." So this is not the reaction that I would ever have got from him. Whenever I'd be talking about either something I'd read or was working on, or something I was curious about, he was always there to kind of give me his impressions and ask questions, and it was so gratifying. And yeah, I never sort of thought of a world where I wouldn't be going back to Calcutta and saying, this is what I'm working on right now in my dissertation. Because if there's anyone that I would talk to about that, other than, Ma and a handful of other people in my personal life as opposed to my professional, Hari Mama was way up there. He was just way, way up there. So it's a little odd. And even now, when I'm writing, I can kind of occasionally think of, well, how would I present it to him? What questions would he ask me? And, I have these conversations in my head with him. And yeah, it's sort of very difficult to believe that that won't take place in person physically anymore. But yeah, I mean, just that feeling of presence for me, I don't think has gone away, and I don't think it will. So yeah, there's that. And occasionally, I mm, read things that remind me of him. For instance, I was reading this fantastic crime novel set in Kamchatka a couple of weeks ago. And the first thing I thought about was, what will Hari Baba say about this? What does he know about Kamchatka? Why is this a place that I know so little about, but it seems so fascinating? I wish I could talk to him. So I think I shared it with Ma. And yeah, we had just a little conversation about it. So, he kind of floats into my life pretty much on a very regular basis because there's so much that I know, I would so easily have loved to share with him. So yeah, I mean, it's yeah, what else can one say? But if it's okay, I think I'll turn to the slides now. Tapumashi or Minka, would you like to talk along with the
No.
slides? Because you can do
We
that. Okay,
up,
I'll just play them.
Put up little captions just to make it lighter.
Yeah, okay. Fantastic. Okay, I'll share the screen now then.
Because Hari's smile never left his face. So we
No,
tried.
it really didn't. It really didn't. And he has this soft, deliberate way of speaking, and I can kind of hear it right now in my mind. Can everyone see it?
I'll have to begin at the beginning though.
Yeah, I will. I'm trying to make it full screen, but I don't know if that's working. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. When did he go to Yangon?
That's a gorgeous picture. Wonderful picture.
I think this is the gorgeous picture.
I love this. I just adore this picture. I've never forgotten that, yeah.
Some of the
Captions have got cut off, yeah.
sorry. But later I can talk about some of this.
Yeah.
Just to give you a sense of.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fantastic. This is Colombia.
Yes. And we're looking for
The great lady.
Picture. Yes, with the great lady.
Very nice, Amma. Yeah.
There you are.
Oh, that's Flurry.
Yeah, I remember. This is in 2017.
Yes, I had a.
Yeah, wonderful. That's
Cafe Village Road in Gorky Shadan, Kingshuk, Abeda, Pakuda were part of us. I'll share this slideshow with all of you on email so that you all can spend time with it and add some more to it.
And the video too should be shared. I see it's being recorded. So I will be grateful if the video too is shared with all of us.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, it will be. I will send it around. Or, I'll find a way to upload it online and, everyone can see it.
one way of doing it, which is a simpler way of doing it, is to put it up on YouTube if you have a YouTube channel. And then just once it's up on YouTube, you can just share the link with everybody.
Yeah, that's
Because
what I was going to
sometimes
do.
files get very heavy and not everybody will be able to
I mean, it's
download.
not possible to email it. It would have to go online.
But the slide is a very small one and I can share that with everybody.
It's not a problem.
Yeah, but you know, we have so many photographs that just scanning and putting them together will take me a long time. So I can see that as memory keeper, that will be my new vocation in life will be a memory keeper of the things my parents and Hari have left behind.
Yeah, lots of them too.
Lots.
So, yeah, maybe I can then request Subhash Babu to start. Subhash Babu, কিছু বলবেন? I can't see Subhash Babu.
We can see him. I
Should
think he
I-
has to unmute himself.
It's on the mute.
Okay. And then I could request PK, because I know that PK has a family commitment. So I'm just waiting. Subhash Babu achen ki?
Lakshmiti, Subhash Babu is there, but his microphone is on the mute.
আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে তাহলে পিকে তুমি শুরু করবে
No, somebody has to phone Subhash Babu and tell him to unmute.
Oh my God! Wow.
আমি ফোন করছি সুভাষ বাবুকে
জয়ন্ত তুমি ফোন করো ততক্ষণে
হ্যাঁ।
পিকে বলতে পারে ভালো লাগবে পিকে
ফোন করে নিচ্ছি
পিকে if you can start.
Can you hear me?
Very well.
Yes.
Yeah. So, my relationship with Hari actually dates back to very, very many decades. Though it's not a relationship which was kind of very intimate or extremely
আমি
close.
আনমিউট করে দিয়েছি
ঠিক আছে।
Acha, Subhash Babu, would you like to speak then?
No, please continue. I'll come up to you.
Yeah, okay. I think it goes over 30 years because I've always known him as, at that time, as Porunjoy's brother-in-law, and Porunjoy has been my oldest and dearest friend. And I think I met him when he came and he was dating Taupati, and he had started coming to their house. And I'll come back to this a little later. But, it was a kind of relationship, a friendship, which I think was one where I got to know him better and more intimately, as it were, each time I met him. And though there were many, many, periods of not meeting at all or just meeting very formally. But let me just take this opportunity just to kind of to about two events that I kind of think of. But before that, before I forget, and I'm getting old and very forgetful, let me thank Lakshmi and Tapu for organizing this. This has been a really very, in a way, emotionally very overdue for all of us to kind of meet together, even though many of us don't know each other, but to meet and talk about Hari. And I'm so glad that Lakshmi's done this, and also this announcement that she made, and these wonderful slides that brought back Hari to some kind of life, as it was, some kind of fire over here. But let me just go also say that, being Teachers' Day, I want to dwell on two things where I learned, strangely enough, through friendship with Hari. And, as a teacher, not formally, but through a friendship, which was interesting. The first was I can't quite date it, nor can I actually remember the actual circumstance. But I think it must have been the 80s when I was still a member of a Marxist party and believed very much intensely in history being a play of winners and losers. And, with that kind of perspective, I used to, pity a group which we used to know as the Narodniks, as populists who went off into the kind of villages, do-gooders, fighting for causes, and completely lost causes and losers at the end of it. And I remember having this conversation with him, which was one-sided because in a way it opened my eyes when Hari started talking about the kinds of doctors, you know, the model of barefoot doctors who went to the villages and worked there, inspired by the Narodniks. And in that sense, it came to me as a kind of surprise, the intensity and passion, and a kind of academically he was speaking, but the passion came through about the ethical commitments that with which people lived and died at times when we thought that, you know, history belonged to us. And I think that was a very important kind of learning experience for me. And in some ways, I think looking back, it's in a way figured some of what I started thinking about much later in my life. The second little event is when I first met him, and then over time, as our friendship progressed, I must say the first time I met him, we used to meet at Poranjoy's room, and it was a wonderful room where we'd listen. The Adda was around music. And I think, you know, there was some music blasting. It was possibly Pink Floyd. Possibly, I like to think it was Careful with That Oxygen, where, you know, this organ sound comes up and there's this huge scream that kind of fills up all the speakers. And I think at that point of time, I'm being dramatic, but I think that's a good memory to have. I think Hari entered the room, and he is presented as the 2B brother-in-law of Poranjoy. And you know, being completely immersed in music and possibly other substances, it came as a bit of a shock to me, because Hari, you know, came with this clipped accent, with a little bit of a goatee, talking with immense self-possession. And I must say, I felt very shocked. I mean, it was like Merson from somewhere from Vienna in the turn of the century. And I must confess, I felt a little distance. But over time, I think that opened up a window to something which I started understanding later, and which was the kind of thing that Lakshmi talked about, the kind of cosmopolitan nature of Hari's. You know, cosmopolitan in the sense of being a cosmopolitan, of, you know, practicing cosmopolitanism as a part of his life. Because I remember when I first came to Calcutta, I studied in Calcutta in school, but since then I was in Delhi, and I'd never worked or lived in Calcutta, you know, as part of a experience or everyday experience. And I joined the center, and I remember this, I think it must have been maybe National Library where we met, because we got a you know, seat in this private bus where we could sit next to each other, and we were proceeding to Salt Lake for lunch or maybe dinner. But I remember that conversation, and what strikes me and what I recall is that conversation. Hari was so warm. He was almost avuncular, so caring about me, because what he was doing was filling me in the gaps in my knowledge about the intellectual life of Calcutta. And he was doing it in a very caring sort of way, with a lot of knowledge, information. And he was speaking like an insider, and I was the outsider, though I kind of always claimed, being born in Calcutta, being educated in school in Calcutta, that I was the insider. So that kind of actually unsettled me. And it unsettled me further when he came to Delhi for a couple of years, when, you know, in a space of 2 years, he became much more of an insider to Delhi's academic life than I ever was. And in that sense, I just want to kind of conclude by saying that, in a way, it was a kind of learning experience for me, because, you know, cosmopolitanism is something that, you know, I've been studying it, and a lot of the criticism of cosmopolitanism is that it's rootless, you belong everywhere and nowhere. But what I think Hari kind of showed me was that he was a cosmopolitan in the sense of belonging, having specific belongings and accepting the obligations, the responsibilities, the relationships that came with the belongings of what he adopted and called home at any point of time. And I think that is something which, this kind of sense of, this very, phrase of multiple belongings, it's not a question of belonging, but a question of accepting the responsibilities that come with the place with which you identify. And that's something I think I will really take back with me, above all, take back with me with great gratitude, because I think through Hari, I could also understand and experience a great deal of warmth that often academics do not possess. And I think that is something I really also ultimately been very important learning for me. Thanks very much again, Lakshmi and Tapu.
That was wonderful, PK. You're absolutely right. His generosity was something quite remarkable. That's absolutely right. In fact, he was so generous that he would irritate me because he had time for everybody and everything. So I would, in fact, often have spats with him. He was just so, he was really caring. I think that's a very good way of putting it across. But anyway, I'm waiting for Subhash Babu's experiences.
Well, let me just add that Uttara will also be joining us. She's on the telephone caller away. She will come. I must begin by confessing a guilt to Taupati and Mrinalini for not having overcome my or mastering the courage to contact them. I really did not know how to do it. So I hope you will forgive me for my silence, which was born with
I can understand.
a lot and sadness, very, that remains a part of us. As Lakshmi keeps saying, it was a vanishing act. It indeed was. King Shuk tells me Hari has contacted Corona. 2 days time he is in hospital, and 5 days later, King Shuk is at my home very early in the morning, though I've just got the news. Well, as again Lakshmi had said, it is unbearable, and well, I think that's all. Hari was a very close friend of mine, at least emotionally, though I don't think we met all that frequently, socially or otherwise. I would have met Hari long time back, around I think the time he had come to Calcutta, late 79 or early 80, in Darjeeling. Hari was supposed to be one of the resource persons for a conference, a kind of cluster college meeting on the new syllabi that was being drafted following the introduction of class 12 courses. Hari did not make it. I came to know about Hari from a common friend, Mr. S.N. Menon, who was the additional district magistrate in Darjeeling then, party to all of us. And party told me that you must meet Hari, and when Hari comes, we will have a good adda somewhere. That did not happen. Next time I first met Hari was in 1989, when Rajat Babu had some throat trouble, and he invited Hari to read Napoleon with the students in Presidency College. I was very new there, not quite on my feet yet in Presidency, having spent in the anonymity of the Mafassals for a long time. I used to teach European history from 1815. Hari was to fill in between 1799 and 1815. I saw him one day in the staff room, in that area, part of the staff room where I had a table and a chair. He had his constant companion, the briefcase. And on the briefcase was uh, Lefebvre's Napoleon, 2 volumes together in French. That was a formidable first appearance. I'm normally a little phlegmatic and don't go out and talk to people I've not been introduced to. But I said I cannot let this opportunity go. I told him, I am Subhash, and Dr. Vasudevan, I always wanted to meet you, but we never had an opportunity. And then came out the generosity that all talks about Hari. And so promptly, oh, Subhash, so good. I have heard so much about you from Palti. And we should have met long time back. I did. And that meeting I think the last time I met Hari was probably in December because his mother died in January. I remember Hari would often call me saying, Subhash, are you home? I happen to be nearby. I've come out for a walk. He will come in. That he came around 7:45, I think. And I said, it's too late for tea or coffee. Let's have whiskey. He said, okay, I don't mind. And we had, as usual, a very easy conversation with Hari doing most of the speaking. I also am quite voluble, so we were both talking. And then I offered a second drink. We were so much into the conversation that Hari took it. And suddenly he said, Subhash, it's 9:15. I must feed my ama. I must give my mother dinner. And then he ran away. After that we talked. Again, it was Hari. In mid-April, he called me, wished me happy Bengali New Year, inquired about me and my wife's ailment. She's on dialysis, whether it's going on regularly. And that's the last time I talked to Hari. After the eloquence of my previous speaker, I don't think I would dwell too much. There are many more people to say. What really brought us together was probably our teaching of European history. I do not claim any kind of expertise that Hari had in European history, but again, that's Hari all over. He did consider me to be some kind of an expert or specialist on European history, at least of teaching of European history in Kolkata. A second thing that struck me is when I joined the university as a part-time teacher around 93. And after that, I regularly met him and we were colleagues of sorts. Is Hari's interest in teaching and communicating with the students. Some of us have felt that Hari didn't write enough. He should have written a lot more. But then I thought that when I first went to a classroom, probably just after Hari had left, and I saw the entire blackboard full of scribblings. And I asked them, what is this? Can I just, those are keep it for some time. We have not completed copying them. This is Dr. Vasudevan writing his lecture. And this, from that day till 2018, so for about 25 years, I've shared courses with Hari. I've taken classes in rooms where he had taken a class earlier, and I have seen them. One was written so much of history for such a long time. If one had put all them together, if we had some kind of screenshots that one could take and put them together, it would be a voluminous thing indeed. Certainly his interest, unlike many of the Oaksbridge or Gharana, Hari had a very genuine interest in the students of the Bengali medium, students coming from the Mafasil areas, and generally we would describe as the relatively backward students. Hari would reach out to them. Hari would try and talk to them in Bengali. I have seen little bits. I'm sure his full-time colleagues would be able to dwell on this much more. And I think one reason why Hari had some interest in me, some affection for me, was that I had written a textbook in Bengali, a textbook on European history. he would always say that. He told me, I think in the early years, in the early 90s even, that Partho Sharati Gupta, how Partho had got together a group of teachers teaching European history and had got books to be written in Hindi, not in English, but Hindi for the large group of Hindi speaking students. So this is what Hari was there. And about Hari's intellectual ability, I'm sure a lot of people will say, it was overwhelming. His generosity, his kindness, and above all in Hari's interest in people. Hari really liked people and he took everyone seriously. There was a genuine sense of empathy in Hari and a genuinely felt sense of equality with the rest of humanity. We will miss Hari. I mean, this is a very inept tribute perhaps, but this is, I hope the Adda will continue and we will put in, I don't want to stand in the way of others by making it very longish. These are the few things that I could think of right now about Hari.
Subhash Babu, there's one thing I wanted to point out. Whenever the packet of Bangla scripts arrived
Oh, yes.
for his first call, I remember that. Moment
Yeah.
they arrived, Hari would be going to your place because you were the person who would be reading those scripts with him. And
Yeah,
I know that.
He would tell me, Pujor bonus eshe getse.
Thank you.
Pujor bonus eshe getse.
Thank you, Taupati, for pointing this out. I thought I would have mentioned it. I did. And what was it? Hari would tell me what he expects. I read the Bengali scripts, I'll give him the gist. And he said, what should be the marking? I said 55%, 58% maybe. No, make it 65%. So I would also, that even in marking, Hari was a lot more generous than the ordinary, the hoi polloi like me.
He had
Thank you for
some
mentioning
hilarious stories of somebody actually tucking in a 100-rupee note.
Absolutely, yes.
So,
Exactly. That's true.
yeah,
That's true. That's true. I have experienced that. That's true. Absolutely. Hari did say that.
I was just thinking that since we've got Joya here, and she was probably Hari's first PhD student, maybe Joya, you could say a few words.
Unmute yourself.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, can I be heard? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lakshmi and Tapu, Mrinalini. Actually, I would really like to highlight what Subhash Babu just said, because today I would actually like to highlight my relationship with him as a teacher. I mean, he was my teacher, and my relationship, the student-teacher relationship, is something that I would like to highlight today. So I'll just take up 5 minutes of your time, and the focus of this entire thing that I have thought out today is the generosity with which he dealt with his students, something that Subhash Babu had just mentioned, So basically, I would say as one of his first students, I really disappointed him because he always wanted me to carry on working on Russian studies. But knowing me so well as he did as his student, he knew how laid back I was, how lacking in initiative that I was. He knew that I wouldn't be able to grapple with the grind of teaching in an undergraduate college and carry out serious research at the same time. So I like to think that he kind of forgave me all my flaws and all my faults. Now, basically, I decided to take up Russian history as my special paper so many years ago, and I did it without really understanding the significance of my choice. By actually taking up Russian history, I came into contact with one of the greatest minds in Calcutta University at that time, a great personality who stayed back in Kolkata, and he had told us often that National Library was his principal attraction, and that there was a great circle of intellectuals in Calcutta who made him stay behind. So basically, Professor Hari Vasudevan, and I called him that right till the end. I still refer to him as my sir, as my teacher. So Professor Vasudevan was a person with such a large heart, and he had such true empathy for his students, so that he was able to tease out whatever qualities they had through his fantastic lectures, detailed board work, and his immense patience. Without him, I would never have completed my PhD. He coaxed and cajoled me into finishing, gradually whittling away the total lack of self-worth and instilling confidence. Even the humblest of his students felt inspired. Such was the greatness of Hari Vasudevan. So my wonderful mentor, he stood by me right till the end of my career and even beyond. I would go to him for any little problem that I had, be it at the workplace or even otherwise, and he would listen to me patiently, which is once more what Subhash Babu referred to, his immense patience, and he would obviously find a solution for me, and I would come away feeling much better. Among the things that I learned from him was never to be dismissive of any student and to appreciate even the smallest of efforts on their part. He was very expansive. He could accommodate our myriad flaws. His generosity was reflected in the way he always put his students at ease and liberally assessed and marked them. Now, I remain eternally grateful to him, right? So he stood like a rock, so as to say, throughout this long period of 4 decades that I knew him. Towards the end, he asked me to teach a special paper at Calcutta University. Now, I was very eager and at the same time quite hesitant. But as usual, he made it very easy for me, providing a structure to work on and all the books to be consulted, right? So the learning experience, I felt that even when I was kind of teaching at that time, I felt that the learning experience had never stopped, and neither had his generosity in marking the scripts, which I assessed along with him. Finally, I took up an ambitious project of holding a national seminar on Eurasia in my college. And of course, I went to him for help. He meticulously corrected my concept note, helped me contact the resource persons, budgeted the costs, and even was instrumental in getting me a grant. He delivered a brilliant keynote address, and the seminar was a resounding success. I realized that he had almost single-handedly built up a huge interest group among the academia, people who focused on his favorite area of engagement. So I just feel privileged to have been a speck in the galaxy of admiring students where Professor Vasudevan was a pole star. I really miss his smiling and gentle presence so much. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Joya. That was really, yeah, you know, you put it so well, put it really nicely. So I'm going to let others now just come in. I just wanted to say that anybody who wants to say something can put their comment in and also just talk. I don't want this to be an orchestrated seminar when I'm like a chairperson saying 5 minutes now and 10 minutes and time up. So feel free to jump in and just say what you want to. I see Anu, so maybe Anu can say something. Hi. So yeah, so maybe Anu can say something and then have others, maybe Kingshuk, Bhaku, of course. I see Chaitanya. So maybe anybody who wants to just jump in, please do.
Also, Choitali, if you have to leave at some point, I know you have
a sure. Anybody who just wants to, you know, want to have a say, just jump in. Don't wait for me. Who'll go?
Choitali.
Okay.
Joya, I always thought I was Hari's first student. And so when you said you were his first student.
No, not first, but one of the first. Right. I'm much older than you are. Right. Yeah.
It's a melancholy occasion for us to meet all these people. And I know all of you because Hari spoke of all of you, even though I never actually met most of you. But it's not easy, you know. He's left a big hole in everybody's heart, and just the genuineness, the warmth, the engagement, and what everybody said, and I just want to add intellectual excitement. it was real. For him, the books that we talked about were not academic treatises, not building people's careers, not their resumes. The ideas were palpable and real. And so the Barefoot Doctor, the Narodnik, engaging in life in the most visceral, meaningful, ethical way, he lived it. And for that, I will always be so grateful to have known Hari for as long as I did. Thank you.
Joy, would you like to talk a bit about the conference to which you brought Hari? And it seemed to be very exciting to work on the long arc of revolution. So just a few words maybe on that.
So, you know, in 2017, the 100th year of the Russian Revolution, the Russian authorities didn't really allow any celebrations. They didn't want to talk about the revolution. Most of our Russian colleagues were forced to write for us in the West, and I know many of them wrote for Indian outlets as well. And so we decided to put together a conference reflecting the global impact of the Russian Revolution. And of course, the first person I thought about was Hari, who better than to come and speak on this subject, his endless knowledge. And so we got a grant at the University of Texas in Austin. And I can't tell you how proud I was that my professor was there. Some of my other PhD professors were there as well. And Hari just charmed everybody. I had everybody during the course of the conference come up to me and say, he's such a wonderful person. He takes so much interest. And then some people said Hari asked the best questions, the most nuanced, the most insightful, and the toughest questions, but in Hari's inimitable manner, right? He could really go for the jugular without giving offense. And again, to bring it back to the intellectual plane, so that person never felt that they were being attacked, but just that the conversation was being taken to a higher level. And I was so privileged that Hari gave us this wonderful article he wrote about Indo-Russian relations during this time, and the conduits from India to Moscow through the northwestern frontier, which is something that we really don't know much about, through the Muslim League and through Afghanistan into Central Asia and then to Moscow. And I just learned so much from the article that I feel it's the highlight of the 2 volumes. And I treasure that memory, Tapudi. Thank you.
And I treasure the memory of you dropping in to see us last year only, right? Not very long ago. I was seeing you after a very long time. I know that Sharbajit and Rupa were his very close friends, but when he said that he was bringing you along, he would always meet them elsewhere. He would never bring them home. But he brought all of you home, and I remember that evening very well.
I just want to add that Tapudi was equally important. When we were undergraduates in presidency, she came and lectured to us, and we were so dazzled by her erudition. You were such a model for us. And Mrinalini, it's so lovely meeting you virtually. Your father was so proud of you. He talked about you all the time. I feel I know you. So I hope someday I meet you in the flesh.
Absolutely.
Well, I hope we can all meet each other in the flesh sooner than later. So let's hope.
Yeah.
Anu?
I had said to Lakshmi earlier on that I wouldn't speak. I had just come in to hear all these stories and anecdotes about Hari. You know, Hari and Tapu are old friends. I met them in 1986 when I first went up to England to do a MPhil then and later a PhD. And in the strangest circumstances, you know, life has very odd ways in which it sort of gets you to meet people and they become friends. I first went to Oxford even though I was going to Cambridge. So I went to Cambridge via Oxford. And at that time, friends of theirs were away. And they said very generously to me and my partner then that we could stay in that apartment. So we must have arrived one evening or late in the evening or night or something. And next morning, we woke up and crossed over and went to Hari and Tapu's flat in Alan Bullock Close. And I'd forgotten the name until I saw that photograph. And I still vividly remember Hari standing and making pancakes and having this very elaborate discussion about, I can't remember anything about any of that, but I was so fascinated. I had never eaten pancakes in my life. And here was this man who knew so many things. And suddenly we were whisked off and we went off to Fort Meadows. And we went for a long walk through Oxford, and there was Hari sort of, holding forth about different parts of Oxford's history, probably world history, certainly Kerala history, since we were both going to work on Kerala history. And I have to say that, coming in, probably I'm the only, or maybe one of the few Malayalis or part Malayalis here. I know.
I'm just
that's why I said very few Malayalis are part Malayalis. In the many years of knowing both of them, I have to say that, when I look back and I'm hearing this being said by several friends here, and I think this is a common refrain. I've often thought of this. I used to think of this earlier as well, which is, I often felt that, I would hold forth because Hari would ask me, what are you working on now? Or what are you reading now? Or which film did you see now? And then I would hold forth on some rubbish. And then the entire discussion would be on whatever it was that I had said. But in the last many, many years, because I, don't go to Calcutta all that often. And, when I did go to Calcutta in the infrequent times, I certainly did meet them both. And, once in a while when there was enough time, go to Salt Lake as well. And in the good old days when Lakshmi used to be there, see her as well. But then she, fortunately, I saw far more of when she was in Delhi. So the relationship became about Vishu and Onam when Hari would religiously phone me. And we would have a very long chat about this and that and the other, but all of it, it would start with, he would say, Enda Gutti, what is it, little girl? And how are you? And then it would be about aging mothers and Kerala and matrimony and some random absurd novel and then Asianet films and, all kinds of things about Kerala. And there was a way in which I think he was sort of trying to connect to a certain part of himself. That's how I'm trying to understand it now. Tapu would know far better, of course, and Mrinalini. But I think there was a part of him that was very rooted in this sort of visceral and affective way to Kerala. So it wasn't as though, and that came through in this enormous enthusiasm about cultural kinds of ways of processing parts of that, those parts of his life. And, there's just so much that I can, I have to say his immense generosity, which everyone is speaking about. I was a great sort of beneficiary of that, not only in academic senses, but also in deeply personal ways in which he was very, very supportive and very kind at times, and in a very unobtrusive way, kind to me at times when I felt, that I didn't have anybody who would understand what I was going through. So I have an enormous debt of that kind towards him. But I will also say that he was just a sort of effortlessly nice person. He was not somebody who tried to be nice. He was just nice. You often encounter people who want to be thought of as nice people. I don't think Hari was even conscious of how nice he was, but he just was such a nice person. And let me just stop here because I think I'm very sort of overwhelmed by thinking about him at the moment, and I would love to hear what others have to say. But very nice to meet you all.
I couldn't agree more, Anu, because both, both just how nice he was and how easily nice he was. And also this deep relationship with Kerala. He, of course, dragged me to every single Kathakali performance in Calcutta right through the 80s. We would, have fierce arguments. I wouldn't like a piece of music, he would, but we had such fun just discussing it, And there was such deep conversation. So it's true, there was something, and very easy. He could sort of argue, we could fight, and then it was the same. It was really nice. I mean, it's true. It's overwhelming to even think about the fact that he's not with us. But in many ways, I keep talking to him. So, I haven't let him go in many ways. So it's the only way I can make sense of this insane, vanishing act.
Anu, if I could say one thing.
Yeah.
I was always amazed, Hari had lived in so many places in the world. He was truly at home in the world. And I had grown up in my little shell in Kolkata, so we couldn't have been more different people. But I've often asked him, but among all the places he lived in the world, he probably lived in Kerala the least, right? So there was these few months when he left and lived in, before the family moved to England, first to Manchester, then to Nairobi. But he always said that what he imbibed of Kerala, he went to a local school in Guruvayur. He was terribly kind of scolded by everybody because he wanted to celebrate Christmas, etc., etc. But he said that it remained with him. It never went away.
Right.
And I remember him describing a Krishnattam performance at Guruvayur and how he peeked into the room of this actor who was putting makeup. And after a point, the guy just got very angry, came and slammed the door on his face. And I think that slap he remembered right till the very end. But it was just vivid memories of that space. And I think, of course, as I said, certain childhood memories, even you may have spent 2 months and they stay with you for a lifetime, really. So it was literally that kind of memory of that space.
So Hari never let Kerala leave him. I think this was the difference, because I think Ravi grew up differently. Hari learned, cultivated Malayalam, never let it go.
No.
And I think right at the end of his life, as he wrote his mother's memoirs, and it's going to be published, it's called Memoirs of a Malabar Lady. It's by Hari and his mother. Amma spoke and he wrote. Historian of early 20th century Kerala. And the first reference in the bibliography that appears is Arunima G, There Comes Papa.
And he has the most fulsome thank you in the thesis, which I don't know whether you remember, Tapu, but I packed it up in those days. There were no CDs and of course there was no internet. And I sent it off to him. And I think you people were still, or he had come to Oxford, you were there, and he had gone back and he was visiting. And I sent it off to him and he actually sat and sent me, I still have those notes and the comments. And you will remember, because we would crib about Raj to him saying he doesn't read. And he was so patient listening to all of that.
So, the fact that Hari could be the best of friends with Raj.
Yeah.
Itself interesting. I couldn't think of two more opposite people. And Raj used to sardonically refer to Hari as Vishwamitra, because he was friends with the world. And Raj hated most of the world around him. But yet there was such deep empathy and friendship between them. Yes.
But you see, the thing is, I think that did influence us, because we always had a very good social relationship with Raj. I've always said this. He didn't read a word of what I wrote, but we got on very famously and had lots of cream teas and so on.
No, even this business that you said about, him reading and, putting down notes. I remember even right till the end, I used to, if I wrote something and I was putting it out there, like unless it was in a very casual personal space, etc., I I wouldn't run it past my mother, but I'd actually run it past my father. And he said that in Oxford, the one important thing that he learned was actually to do a lot of rapid reading. And there would be books like he could get through a Tolkien book, in fact, and get to the crux of it. In fact, he would do speed reading at times and say that, okay, yes, I want to know what the story is about. I want to get ahead, etc. But with things that you gave him, he actually always managed to read it, comment on it, even as I said, suggest fine, that bit can go. In fact, it's just like, you can shorten it, etc. So it was just amazing. I think the ability that he had to be able to even quite quickly read something, assess that, and, get back to you about it. So that was for me, that was for you, for so many others. So, yeah.
So who would like to add? Mickey? Mickey, কিছু বলবে?
Yes.
Hello, everybody. First, I just wanted to echo the sentiment Subhash Babu expressed, that I have not been able to summon the courage and call Tapudi and talk to you, Tapudi. I managed to call Mrinalini. I hope you will forgive me. We'll talk. I was supposed to be in Kolkata right now, but didn't happen. Going back to what Choi said earlier, I was part of that first batch of students, I think maybe the second, that we studied with Tapudi when she came to Presidency College. And then I gravitated towards the Kusum apartments, where I found that group of people. Paranjaya was there. Paranjaya, I don't know whether you remember me. I was probably looked like 12 years old back then, but anyhow, and I met Hari there in 1982, I think. And I always felt that Hari was so indulgent, he was very amused by this young whippersnappers, tagging around, trying to get to adult conversations almost. And at that time, Mrinalini, this is long before, you were there, but I think that Hari was part of that growing intellectual growing up. It's sort of almost Proustian for me, that embedded memory of his voice. I never directly studied with him, but he was always there. And I think I dare say that without Tapudi and Hari, I don't think I would have made it as a historian. And there's another very funny story that maybe some of you remember. Joy, you might remember that some of us boys in Presidency College, one of our papers in the first, I think part 1, everybody got an average of like 15 or 20 out of 100. I think I got 12. And it was Hari who was part of that review committee, who went in there and, with the right amount of outrage, so rescued us from that. Hari was also part of the syllabus committee that created the reading list with which we grew up. Like Georges Roudet, Revolutionary Europe was partly, as a sort of anchor, was Hari's intervention, from what I remember. So it's very difficult to talk about it, sort of talking about yourself, talking about Hari and his voice. And the other thing that I remember so vividly was how Hari could be so polite and so caring and so incisive at the same time, that he would pick out, if there's any person I think is not capable of ad hominem, ever, it was Hari. Like, he would pick out the argument, but he would be so loving in the way he did it. And that curation, that curating, students were Hari's canvas. And they were his masterwork, as it were, in many ways. And that comes through so clearly, talking to all of you. So I'm just it's a little hard to talk about this right now. I'm overwhelmed. This is a kind of a excision and a loss that it's hard to wrap around, especially given the circumstances in which it happened. It's almost like I'm sure it feels like that, like a missing limb here. And it's going to take a long time to reconcile ourselves to this loss. And I'll just leave it at that. Thank you, Lakshmi and Tapudi, for organizing this, and I hope to see you soon.
I just wanted to add something really quickly. There's a chat function in Zoom. So if you kind of move your mouse to the bottom of the program, there's an icon that says chat. And if you click on it, you can see what other people have written or add something yourself. Or if you'd like to talk, then, you know, just say something there, and then that way you can kind of get going. Or if, you know, if you need to leave and say bye. But don't want to break in, then that's one way of doing it. So I just thought I'd mention that.
Niladri, would you like to come in? Just, we had some people in mind. So
Niladri, and then Chaitanya uncle could probably also come in and talk a bit about the Delhi days.
You have to unmute yourself, Niladri.
Everyone has been talking about how wonderful Hari has been as a teacher, as a colleague, and a friend. I'll maybe say just a few words about my experience of working with him in a project over 4 years. That's the production of the NCERT textbook. That's something which he and I were involved in from about 2005 to 2009. I'd known Hari and Tapati very well in Oxford. Both of them lived in a flat just opposite mine on Woodstock Road, opposite St. Anthony's College. And Hari would come up often, and we would meet very often over a cup of tea or a coffee or a glass of beer, and we would chat. And every discussion and chat with him was extremely stimulating and productive because he would come up with references, with readings, with suggestions about what music we should hear and what books I could buy from Blackwell, because Blackwell was something which opened up my world of books in a way that in India at that time, without Amazon and the good bookshops, we didn't have access to those books. But I really came to know, and of course, as Arunima said, he knew every small detail about every place in Oxford. So he would tell you all the interesting things you'd love to hear. He was a wonderful tourist guide also in that sense. But I really came to know him closely when the two of us were involved in producing the textbooks for NCERT. He was the chairperson and of the overall chairperson in charge of all the books that were being produced and holding the teams together. And I was the chief advisor of the history textbooks. Now, over those 4 years, we talked constantly over the phone and in meetings outside over cups of tea and coffee. We talked and discussed how this project could work, could be worked out properly. And what I learned about him over the years is something which has stayed with me, till now, till the days, his last days. In producing textbooks, those of you who've worked in big committees would know, producing textbooks with hundreds of authors and committee members is extremely difficult. The curriculum, first the general problems of creating the curriculum in all the subjects, seeing them through, creating the syllabus, deciding on the structure of the syllabus for all disciplines, not one. I was interested in the history, but he was looking after all the disciplines really. Then the authors had to be chosen, deadlines had to be met. And more important than production of the text as such was also very often just allowing committee members to work with each other. Everyone who's been in meetings and in groups and institutions would know that very often conflict between committee members have to be negotiated tactfully. There are ruffled egos, there are problems of different kind of tonalities of voice. People can't stand each other, although everyone is wonderful and good in their intellectually, but working in a team is a different thing. So in that process over the 3-4 years, I saw what a wonderful chairperson he was and what a wonderful committee member he was. I agreed with him a lot about how to actually manage these things. Some of those ideas about how managing people and managing committees is something I shared with him, and therefore he talked to me a lot also. Kumar and him and I would often chat about certain kinds of problems which might come up, not in history, not in social sciences, but in other disciplines very often, where committee members were loggerheads. They were all very good, but they just wouldn't agree to certain kinds of things. So we had to go off to IIC, have a drink, chat over things, and try and sort out things. But he was so great in sorting out these differences, negotiating these conflicts, making the teams and the groups work together, and energizing them, and generally spreading goodness around. There was a general good feel when he was there, with his laughter, with his jokes, with his interventions. And in meetings, because each syllabus, each textbook that was produced, the texts were read out in meetings and comments were given to the authors, and the committee members exchanged ideas. In the meetings, he was always wonderful, coming up with interesting interventions, talking to the author, giving suggestions, giving references, and that was really, really extremely useful. But above all, I think what I remember about him, what I really loved about him, is how good a listener he was. Teachers are not always good listeners. They love talking. Often teachers love their own voice, and we can talk for 1 hour, 2 hours, but listening to students is a different thing. And that's something which one or two people, Arunima, talked about. But that's in the meetings, if you can't listen to the other properly. In conflicts, if you can't negotiate by listening to both sides and then trying to come up with a solution, it can be, you can't run a committee properly. So he was a wonderful listener, and that made people feel good. Not just simply that he could comment on what people were presenting, but generally listening and making committees work. So this is something which I think all chairpersons, all committee members, all teachers ought to have. And he had it within him, and that's why he was such a great teacher. But what worked with people also was his general gravitas, his clipped accent, and all the other authors and committee members were always impressed by that. But beyond that, I think what really worked is his laughter, his smile, the feeling, the sentiment and the feeling he created, the milieu he created, where everyone felt always good. So the entire NCERT experience, I think, became so pleasurable, despite all the problems and despite all the conflicts that were there. And it was so productive because we had one of the finest chairpersons that I could have imagined. I didn't realize he would be so good. I had known him earlier, but he was a wonderful chairperson to have. And it was personally extremely pleasurable because for me, because he was also in the history section, writing, producing, giving ideas. But overall, I think he was a model chairperson. And anyone who could work like that would also be a great teacher. I've never been a student of his, but as a teacher, I would imagine why he would be so successful and so good. That memory of NCERT for me was wonderful, primarily because we had the finest chairperson running it. I think I'll stuff too.
Thank you, Diladri uncle. In fact, you pointed out one thing which always struck me about my father, which was the fact that I think after a certain stage in any profession, I remember my mother also mentioning it, that, you know, we don't even have management degrees, but we're just all expected actually to do people management and administration after a point. And a lot of people really dread that work. But that's the one thing my father actually did with amazing confidence, and it's almost like he enjoyed doing it, because of which I think he had at one point even considered the civil services, in fact, because that's something I don't know, even I would probably dread after a point. And I told my father that I'm not cut out for that kind of thing, like, you know, I wouldn't consider that. But really, like, managing how many different people, sorting out their internal fights, etc., getting money in on time, etc., these are not things a lot of academics after a point want to do, but really it's the real job of you know, making institutions run, which is quite amazing. And the other thing that you mentioned, which was about the NCERT project, I remember working on a few textbooks myself when I was in Orient Black Swan, and even before that, when I was in school, one of the nicest things was that when we were in 11 and 12, we had some really good textbooks actually that the school decided to include, and that the ICSE decided to include in the curriculum. So one of them was Norman Lowe, and it was his book on world history. And I still remember, like, the first person who was most excited about it was my father. And there was, like, Norman Lowe included things in such an interesting way. There was a photograph of Hitler celebrating the outbreak of the First World War. It was as amazing as that. And there were, like, little cartoons that they would throw in. And I loved my psychology book also, actually, because they had, as I said, cartoon panels, and they would have, like, little speech bubbles, etc. So I think I got from those early years, in fact, a sense that he was generally interested even in textbooks, the way they were written, the way they were taught, etc. So thank you for pointing out his experience with NCERT. And maybe now we can have Chaitanya uncle talk, and after that have Shuchandana and Shoptadeepa, Shamurpita, some of them also add.
I just want to say one thing. I think King Shuk wrote that in his piece in the Anandabajan. যে উনি খুব দক্ষ প্রশাসক ছিলেন. Hari had amazing administrative skills, and he never shied away from it. So for him, being an intellectual did not mean that he would not take on institutional burden. And I'll tell you that the only reason I had the courage ever, and I'm saying courage, to become the director of the center was because Hari said, you can do it. I never thought that I had any leadership quality. I had any, you know, thing in director of an institution. But everything that I did in life was because Hari said, you can do it. And I think somewhere I got the confidence to do it. But I think Hari was a gentle administrator, because I've seen people who sit on power and get things done by wielding the stick.
I still remember when we used to enter, I used to go for my Japanese classes in Calcutta, and Matthias was just next door. My father would also come and attend some of the Japanese classes, actually. But when we would come back and we would like, you know, had to pick up his things from Matthias, and there would be guards at the gate always doing like a salam in like complete Sarkari style. And we actually told them on several occasions, we feel really awkward when they do that. In fact, you know, we almost want to do a salam to them because we benefit more from their service probably than they do from anything we do there. But it was like small things like that. It's like everybody, I think, gets really kicked after a point when they're in a position of power. I'll have this, that, etc. But it's just a sense of rootedness despite where you are, really. So, yeah.
So despite his clipped accent, which I think remained with all of us, you know, what PK said, there's a way in which Hari spoke English. And yet, you know, Hari was more at home with the Paulwala, the courier service wala, with the local cake shop.
Yeah, everywhere we go these days, there are people who would have,
you know,
yeah,
because he was so much at home with everybody, I appeared like the snob when I'm next to him. I could not get on with people so easily.
Hari
made me feel like a snob because
generous to a fault.
So
I remember, I agree. Hari was generous to a fault. I remember how he absolutely bullied me into taking the services of that travel agent who excelled in giving us toilet special seats. And Hari insisted that he was a wonderful guy. So I have a lot to say about that. If ever I see him, I'm going to remind him of that. It was outrageous. He's a very good man.
So whoever wants to come on next.
Yes, exactly.
Chaitanya? Yeah, Chaitanya's unmuted himself. Yeah.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me on this. First thing I want to say is that I met Hari 42 years ago for the first time, and he had just come back from Cambridge, and he started teaching at Ramjas. And I shared an apartment with him in Delhi, and with another interesting character called Ramachandran. He lives in San Diego right now. Anyway, one is that I believe, first thing that I want to say is that I think it's quite amazing that more than 4 months after his departure, so many of us is lost so deeply on a daily basis. There are beings who have that quality. And having spent close to a quarter century in Delhi over different stretches, I can tell you I've understood the meaning of the word matlabi. And Hari was one of the very, very absolutely individuals who always gave completely of himself. And we are a very transactional people in India, but there was nothing transactional about Hari. He was always, you could always count on him to spare his time for you. And, I'm not an academic myself. I have been in journalism for half a century. But what I cherish most is my conversations with Hari, things that I was always interested in. And whenever I called him for an opinion on something, it would start to unfold an amazing array of knowledge about subjects that I didn't know anything about. And it was exciting enough because it would set me off on a kind of detective hunt for clues and pointers to stories that he talked about. Whether it was for independence, India's relationship with the Soviet Union, the Russians, whether it was a family like the Khemkas who rose to prominence in Russia and are still very prominent. Whether it was reading of Indian
Chaitanya uncle, can you just talk a little loudly? For some reason, yeah, your voice is getting a little cut, I think.
Okay, is better?
Yes, that's definitely better. Yes.
So I was saying that whether it is the rewriting of Indian history, references to other historian friends of his who would be very helpful to me. I always found them everything in and of course, I remember going to meet him in Tapu's parents' apartment soon after they met, and this is before they got married. I used to go to Calcutta regularly in those days. Soon after he moved to Calcutta and meet at a mutual friend's house and sit around for long hours in the evening with the power cuts, no lights at all, sitting and talking about all kinds of things. And going to my first experience, I was telling Tapu the other day that I went to, I think Chidu was also with us, if I'm not mistaken. We went to this restaurant on Park Street and we had baked Alaska. My first experience.
I think that was Mocambo for sure. If it's baked Alaska, that was Mocambo.
My first taste of baked Alaska was with, and my wife keeps reminding me that all my good memories are associated with food. I very definitely enjoyed food. more recently when I went to Kolkata, he took me to a Bengali restaurant. Paracha was also with us at that time. So anyway, one of my earliest memories of Hari is when we started sharing this apartment. He had come down from Cambridge with a stash of Melodia records of classical music, and I had just bought a record player when I started working in Delhi, and we would listen to music for long hours in that apartment. And I think he actually left a few of them with me when he moved to Calcutta. But and then of course when I came, regret is that I didn't spend enough time with him because I spent more than 20 years outside India. I came back to India in 2006 and joined the Hindustan Times as editor. He was about to embark on his, what I thought was a harebrained journey across continents in the footsteps of Russian explorer Nikitin. Have I got the name right?
Yes, you did good.
So my first interest was, of course, to extract some articles for Hindustan Times from that journey. But I remember reading about it in years subsequently. And anyway, what I found most amazing was that he was always a whirlwind energy. The number of projects that he had got involved with. I just heard Neeladri talking about the NCRD project, and during those days, whenever he came to Delhi for a day for meetings, we would either talk on the phone or try and meet for a very brief while. And that was just one of them. The Maulana Azad post that he held, the Calcutta University post that he held, and then what he did with the Jamia Millia, for example, he was an institution builder, and I think if he had the opportunity, he would have built an entire university from scratch. These days we talk about the merits of a liberal arts education, like the one they hold out in places like Ashoka these days. But I think Hari would have been a very, very good vice chancellor of one of those liberal university with his vast array of knowledge and his commitment to working extremely hard. I don't know how he packed so much into his life. But the fact is that he did an enormous amount of work, wrote prolifically, and you can be boring, but if you are an academic, when you write books, but he wrote in a very, very engaging manner. And I still don't, I think he never published his PhD, right?
No, he didn't.
He did.
No, he never published his PhD.
And he told me about his work at that time.
And strangely, the one reason he kept telling me, in fact, I should do a PhD is so that I can bring out a book out of the whole thing. Like, wow, okay.
Memory was quite astonishing because way back in the 70s, before I came to Delhi, before I met Hari, just before I met Hari, I used to edit a magazine called Trans India in Bombay. I put him very proudly. And he totally must have looked at them, but remembered what I had shown him like 40 years later. Because more recently, when Paranjoy was working with DPW in Bombay. Hari had gone to Bombay for to meet Paranjoy, I think, and some other, also to meet Mrinalini. And I called him there, and he told me about, he was in Back Bay at that time. He reminded me that he had read a cover story I had written back in 1957. He had read. Astonishing memory. Of course, think he was very fond of asterisk, right?
Yes, yes. The joke was that there was a student of his who then was also a friend of mine who once was caught in class reading Asterix, and my father said, yes, like that's not a bad idea at all, actually. So he was quite encouraging of people reading all kinds of things, even if it meant like, you know, it was in his class. So,
So the point is that, you know, there are very, very few human beings who are capable of deep conversation about intellectual topics, subjects, and history, and so on, and very fun subjects like food and stories and authors, and I don't know. I mean, I always believe one of my deepest regrets is when one of my dearest friends passes away. I always feel terrible that I never spent more time with them. And in the recent past, I've lost 2 or 3 very, very good friends, and I count very absolutely on the fingers of one hand the friends that I really cherish, and Hari was one of them. I was really, really grieved to lose him. And I just feel that, you know, somehow I feel that if there is some way we can foretell these events, then you would at least say, let me go and make some way, in some way, spend far more time with this person, because I won't be able to have these conversations any longer. Unless, of course, as Lakshmi says, we have some astral encounters later on. But the point is that uh, these are the things that endeared Hari to me, and I'm going to miss him terribly. And I felt so grieved when I heard the news from his brother. Thank you very much for having me.
We have Hari's PhD students here across generations. And it would be good, I know Shuchandana is one, but Shuchandana will also speak about how Hari transformed Matthias from a non-place into a really happening place. So maybe Shuchandana, there's Ananya, who was not a direct student. Maybe Ananya would like to say something. I know Shaptadipa is somewhere. King Shuk, Shobhik, yes, and anybody, because I think there are Hari here across Rohan, Shinjini, I don't know. So, but maybe Shuchandana can start off, I thought, because it's also about, you know, Hari managing places. And I saw he put life and soul into Matthias. I mean, I can speak for that. He really put life and soul into making that a happening place. Shuchandana, you have to unmute yourself.
Yes. Hello here, everybody, and I'm so thankful that this initiative has been taken. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So I'm very glad that this initiative has been taken by Lakshmi and Property for, you know, having this Adda and having so much about Sir. And in fact, till today I still address him as Sir, because, you know, I see so many of my teachers here today. And so, I mean, HSB continues to be that to me. I mean, my teacher and my mentor, my PhD supervisor, and in many ways, you know, he has been a, you know, I mean, guided me in in several ways, in various occasions that we, you know, worked, not only at Maulana Azad, but even after I left Maulana Azad, and, you know, the little time that I spent at Calcutta University, just sneaking into, I mean, King Shuk would also, you know, agree with me on that. We're going into the China Center of Calcutta University, going into a corner and working and just typing a few things on my work related to Eurasian studies. And Sir would always be, you know, very encouraging on that too. And yes, my association with Sir goes back to 86, 88, when I was a master's student in Calcutta University, subsequently MPhil, PhD, and then Maulana Azad. institute where I joined when Borun Babu had begun this. I mean, he was the first director of this institute in 93. I joined in 93 and then continued till 2015. And I was so happy when Sir came to that institute as director, took over as director in 2007. Yeah, I think 2007 to 2012, that was his time. And I mean, I knew Sir as my teacher, as my supervisor. I knew he was so, I mean, very careful about the fact that, you know, if you have to learn a particular, I mean, it has to be area studies, it has to be Russian studies, or Eurasian studies. It has to be a language base. It has to be language centric. You have to have a hold over the language. So in my case, he had practically, you know, I mean, told me, I mean, when I was doing my MPhil, and said that, okay, you start learning Russian. Go to Gorky Sadan. Lay your hands on anything that you come across, or even a small little, I mean, even if it's a report or whatever. So, but it will give you a hang of the language, hang of the place, and also the library that you're visiting there. So, you know, from those times still, and when I saw him in Maulana Azad in full steam, he was just the same. I mean, even after my PhD days, I saw him in the same way, I mean, he wanted that, you know, that people at place should be alive. I mean, whether it was, I mean, we had area studies and Southeast Asian studies, we had Eurasian studies, we had South Asian studies. So, you know, I mean, everywhere Sir had his, I mean, he wanted that place to be alive, and everybody should be, you know, talking about the, of the various readings. I mean, they're, whatever they're working on. We used to have this little, you know, talks, and say, he used to come and tell us that, you know, you just talk about little things that you've read. I mean, that doesn't really, I mean, has to be a very constructive kind of stuff, and always encouraging us. I mean, because we had our experiences of bringing out newsletters. So, you know, he would remember in that newsletter, the one which came out in 95, there was a little piece on that. So let's bring that out. I mean, let's, bring it to the table and see what you all thought at that point of time. And 2012, what are you thinking about? So that kind of thing, you know, he was always used to, I mean, connect the past and the present. And in the little, you know, the things and in his thoughts and ideas, and also the readings that we did. And coming to the fact that, you know, we could do, we could go on field surveys, field trips much later in Maulana Azad, because, you know, initially despite the fact that I was working on in Central Asia, and I was working on Central Asia, particularly initially on Tajikistan, and then subsequently in Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan. So, you know, these were the places that initially there were not much funding from the Ministry of Culture, and, you know, that was our parent, that institution that sponsored us. So, I mean, so we accepted it that way. But when we could, I mean, and Sir was always, and when he was the director of that institute, and so, you know, he was always saying that when you go to a particular place, I mean, you go and talk to the people, meaning you go to the not just, you know, I mean, hold yourself up in the libraries and work there. Just go and talk to the person, the faculty, even the students, and see what they come, what ideas they come across, I mean, they give you. So, I mean, that was the kind of, you know, the complete sense of field trip. And I used to come back and, you know, I used to take down notes and tell Sir, and he was so excited. I mean, he said that, yeah, of course. I mean, this is the connecting thing that you can bring forth. I mean, you know, he was always eager to listen. I mean, that was always there in Sir. And so, you know, and he would come up with new ideas. I mean, I remember, you know, during my last Kazakh trip, that was in 2013-14, I wanted to go and visit the oil fields of West Kazakhstan. So I just came across a group of engineers who had visited the place, and they were there in Atirao. So I contacted them, and one of them was the Bengali. He was Shumantro Chatterjee, and in fact, he writes for Anandabajar time to time. So, and he put me in touch with a few people up there in Atirao. And so I told Sir, I'm going to Atirao because, you know, I have this person who has put me in touch with these people. So he was excited. You're going alone? I said, yeah. I mean, if I meet somebody there, there'll be a second person. But right at the moment, I'm traveling from Astana to Atirao. And he said, okay, so then let me know, I mean, what you come across. And so, so he was always encouraging on that. And so I knew that there was always be somebody there in Kolkata coming, wanting to listen and to the kind of, the things like, I mean, I gathered there as during my field trips. And Sir came up with this unique idea of this, this northern reach of Buddhism, this concept. I mean, when we went for this year of, I mean, the year of India in Russia in 2009, the delegation visits to Ulan-Ude, Moscow and Ulan-Ude. So, and we had this collaboration with the Institute of Mongolian Buddhist and Tibetan Studies. And Sir took that idea of, of how a collaboration could work out on the northern reach of Buddhism. I mean, it is the Buddhist studies, just not, I mean, how that India and Russia relations could also be worked out on this concept. And so, it was a wonderful idea. And Sir was, when he was presenting this during his keynote addresses, or when he was taking it across the, during the roundtable discussions that we had, I mean, Marina Baldano and Victor Bazarov, they were saying, I mean, Professor Vasudevan, I mean, if it is Vasudevan, is an Indian or is it he's an Armenian? Because Armenians have their, their surnames ending with a Yan, Y-A-N. So is he Armenian or is he Indian? I said, okay, come on. He's Professor Harishankar Vasudevan is very much Indian, is very much part of us. So, then he, I mean, that was the kind of conversations. And then it's, I mean, flawless Russian, and I used to sneak away. I mean, I used to, hide myself. I said, sir, I do not belong to this delegation because you are speaking. I'm somewhere behind you. So, and he said, no, you understand that is fair enough. I mean, you don't have to hide like that. And then, so, I mean, that is the kind of thing, always encouraging. And, that kind of, that concept, I wish that, if had it been of deeper interest to others who came after Sir, probably we could have continued that concept of, and would have given us bigger projects, and, the Maulana Azad would have seen a brighter day. And in the institute, I mean, having seminars, roundtables, annual, this annual seminars, conferences, Sir always worked it out in a unusually, with this meeting that we had, this fellows meetings, and, this monthly meetings that we had. I mean, Sir used to have it, his little diary that he had, a small little notebook, just to scribble on that. And we always wanted to hear what has written in that, because we haven't written on that scale. So we used to tell him, sir, you just better show us what you have written down so that, we'll remember later on. So, I mean, and he used to remember what had taken, I mean, what was discussed in the previous meeting so that it could be carried forward in the next one. So, I mean, whether it was the libraries, and I mean, name anything during those 5 years. I mean, having people from Mongolia, from Belarus, from, from Latvia, from anywhere. I mean, you just come across anything. I mean, we found a name and he said, sir, this person works on that particular aspect. Could we write an email to him and find out whether he's interested to come? Then he would try to see that, okay, our funds are not, not that much. We cannot sponsor him wholeheartedly. But okay, this is February, March. That is the time where people do travel up to Delhi. We'll see if you can accommodate him for the domestic part and all that. You'll always have some ideas how to bring in people and having a, kind of a wholesome conferences and discussions. And then, of course, the publication part was always there. So that was, I mean, Maulana Azad was lively, and I mean, that institute was so lively when Sir was there. And I mean, after he left, I mean, there were various other, things, priorities, which he never got adjusted to. And of course, I mean, by 2016, all of us had left. I mean, left or whatever. I mean, discontinued. Those kind of projects never were continued. So we all had our different ways of, moved on. But till this day, we still remember how Sir had, set up that place. And when I go to the library, I mean, not now, I mean, at least a few months back, in the Mitrokin archives, how they were kept, Sir had this particular way of keeping that but that, you know, that rack, that almirah, whatever books he used to bring, he always used to tell me, always make a copy, first and the second copy, and keep it in the almirah, because you never know, the original might get lost, but you have at least another copy where you can rely on. So, I mean, wonderful. I mean, my association with Sir, my journey during from the masters, I mean, when I was doing my masters, my MPhil, my PhD, and then subsequently all this 34 years. I mean, he has been always in my frame of mind, with always preoccupied. And that apart, I mean, of course, the man, I mean, the person that she was. I mean, I also used to stay in CE block. Tapasidi, your I think used to stay in CE 176 or something.
178. The other day I walked past your house, I remember.
Yeah.
You saw
Yeah.
Mrinalini when she was very small, right?
Very small, right? Yeah, exactly.
And that photograph of her as a baby is at C178, yes, where Hari and I are holding her.
Just opposite that sea market. And I remember Sir used to say that, you know, those this every during the pujas, the programs that used to be held. I mean, I think Mrinalini used to perform there also. You know, little. I mean, either it's the theater or the little things. I mean, I mean, the block babies. I mean, the bachas used to perform. So he used to be very excited, and my niece also used to go there. Dia also used to go there and their time. So, you know, those were the little things. I still remember. I mean, you all staying in CE block that time. I used to meet my father at the bazaar. That he used to come and say that I don't have to worry, because at that point of time I was writing my MPhil dissertation. It used to be very late if I used to go for mental discussions to your place, and then Sir used to come and reach me home because it became past 9. He used to call up my father and say that, you know, Mr. Chakravarti, don't worry, I will reach her home because this has to be done. So, and then of course, I mean, you all came to my, you know, my wedding. Bhaskar Babu was there. All of them were there during my wedding. So, you know, it was a different kind of a thing I would never, ever sort of forget. It's always there in my memory. I mean, whether it's personal, whether it's in that space. And of course, Maulana Azad was a time, those 5 years were a time when I was seeing Sir day in, day out, and also during the trips. So, you know, I would like to remember those wonderful days.
Two things that you mentioned which kind of remind me of other things was, of course, as I said, like, you know, this fascination for languages, because again, at one point of time, again, like the two things he mentioned, if you want to do a PhD, in fact, the things that you really need to look forward to is being able to learn a language. And I think my father knew more languages than all of us put together over here, because he was always interested and constantly picking up languages. And the other thing you mentioned, which was really funny, was actually his connection with the Armenians. And I remember one of the things that used to be special was, even when people came to Calcutta, etc., typically you would just go for the standard, you know, Christmas things on Park Street, or, you know, on 25th December. Christmas, in fact, at the church over here. And again, it felt so strange because he seemed almost like a part of that community, like whether it was the Armenians. And they also, there was at one point, some gentleman came and had like a discussion with my father. They spoke in Armenian, and then later he smiled and he said that, oh yeah, he thought, in fact, both of us were Armenian. He wanted to, you know, arrange a marriage between you, like pointed to me and some son, etc. And I was like, wow, okay. That also happened. So, yeah, but it was like all kinds of those aspects that I definitely do remember. So
yeah, absolutely.
But yeah,
you could, you know, when we, you know, I was Hari's student too. I think some people here will remember that even I was Hari's student, and that's how we met. But
I remember it very well, Tapu. I remember it.
So I remember when Hari came to teach. You know, a Cambridge return person, a specialist in European history. We were very young and we were really thrilled. And Rajat Babu was saying, he's my friend from Cambridge, he's coming. I remember when we first saw him, we thought he was genuinely a Russian. We thought a Russian had come to teach us Russian history. And I remember with my friend Anjum.
That was just her fallacy. He looked
no.
Like a Russian.
Anjum and I were having this argument. Anjum then was Anjum Ahmed, later Katyal. Anjum said, yes, I've heard he's a real Russian who'd come. And we said, no, I've heard his name is Vasudev. not be a Russian. And then I remember we saw Hari coming down the stairs, Presidency College. We were sitting in the portico and Rajat Babu was bringing him down. And he came down, and that's when we were first introduced to each other. But this idea that Hari could well be a Russian, Hari could well be an Armenian, is something that was part of that presence.
Absolutely, yes. Okay.
And thank you, Shuchandra, for sharing the photographs of the Ulan-Ude trip. They're wonderful photographs, and the one that appears in the card is Hari at Baikal Lake.
Yes, yes.
No, but I just have to share something with Tapu speaking about Hari and his clipped accent. Gautam Da, inimitably in his style, said, "We jano Hori, Hori, Hori Sahib, kintu Tapu, fair like a foreigner." I will never forget this comment. I was so horrified when he said this to me. He said to me, "Jano, Hori kintu Sahib na." I said, "Yes, I do. I'm aware."
And Lakshmi, it is our deepest regret for all our lives that Mrinalini never got married to an Armenian.
I know. I was so enthusiastic at Christmas. I was like, great. Okay. I think
thank you
maybe
so
we
much.
can have, what do you call it, Shoptadeepa, Shopurpita, them speaking.
Even
and
Anonna.
Yes, who we met last year. As I said, I'm so glad that we were able to go to Goa.
Yeah, and Anonna came over to Goa.
It was a lovely time.
Fun afternoon.
And we went to eat at this lovely restaurant called Black Market.
Yes.
It does not live up to that name, but is in like, but otherwise in a good sense. In fact, it was like excellent seafood. We had such a good time.
So maybe quickly, go on.
Anonna, come in and
we'll have to do like a quick round now because I'm guessing, yes, it's time's going up.
Thank you so much. Actually, I was asked recently to contribute a piece to the Journal of Asian Studies on COVID, and my piece is dedicated to Professor Vasudevan. And I wasn't his student, but there was not a single stage of my career where I didn't talk to him about my work, and he didn't encourage me and inspire me. And it hit me that the new work, in fact, after I met you all in Goa, I went off to Kerala, and this was the first time that I'd ever done research there. And it's really hard to make sense of the fact that I won't be able to discuss what I found there with him. And it's one of, I guess, a gift that I saw you all in Goa, this place that I love so much and that I'd spent so many years telling Professor Vasudevan about, and I got to take him to the archives that I
remember we were all busy, like keen on seeing Fontainers, beaches, etc. What did my father say? "Oh, I'm going to the archives. I quickly need to see what that's like."
Right, he came in and I introduced him to all the archivists, and they were all so impressed, and they were like, "Sir, you must come back." And I could just see his excitement, and and their excitement at meeting this wonderful, brilliant cosmopolitan historian who was excited about these archives. It's, for me, part of my grief about Professor Vasudevan is my father's grief. My father, he's a diplomat, and when he, so he's always been bonhommous, and he's obviously had to be convivial with many people all his life. But I think his one true friend was Professor Vasudevan. And when he came back to Calcutta for the first time in his life, I think he had a really, really true and good friend. And his morning would start, he would wake up in the morning and pick up his phone and say, "Professor," and then I would hear his voice saying, "Ambassador."
And we knew ambassador, exactly.
I'll never forget, Hari's morning would begin by saying, "Hello, Ambassador."
Exactly. And so I think, that friendship and what brought them together was this cosmopolitanism in the best possible sense of the word. not a cosmopolitanism based on sort of, you know, a shared eliteness across class, but really a deep curiosity and love for people and other cultures and otherness. And I think that's what made him such a extraordinary thinker, but really just such an extraordinary person. And I'm just so hugely grateful for the time that I got to spend with him, and particularly that that wonderful, for me, last time in Goa, which is definitely my best memory of Goa.
It was a fabulous afternoon. I mean, we had such fun.
I think thanks to Aruna's recommendation, my parents also visited these really old Goan homes in Chandor and all. And I remember every place there, it did seem like a novel could be written. There'd be like a house with like some, 20 rooms and 2 warring brothers who still survived there. And like,
old women overseeing, yeah.
Exactly, but there could be, I think my father would have probably seen stories everywhere.
You know, Lakshmi was going to bring him back to Goa.
Yes.
It was not to happen.
Yes, very unfair.
Instead, there's an essay prize that she's beginning for him. So I don't know. You know, taking Hari anywhere in the end was difficult because his mother was ailing and he never wanted to leave her and go. So that was, that commitment to him was bigger than anything else, to be there for her. So the few times we were able to take him away, he hugely enjoyed himself. And we are so glad we could take him to Goa.
Yeah, anybody else, in fact, especially among, again, students.
Shaptadipa, maybe.
Shaptadipa, Shamurpita, one of them. Then I see
Kingshuk and Shobhi, Pakuda, of course. There's
Modunita,
Shaptadipa.
Ratnapoli, there's so many people.
But Shaptadipa's here. Come on, there.
Hello, Tapati ma'am. Hello, Lakshmi ma'am. Thank you for having me here. It feels really strange to be part of a meeting held in memory of Sir, but still, in some way, I'm happy to be here, getting to know about Sir, getting to hear so many stories about his life. And during my MA classes at the University of Calcutta, I was left absolutely enthralled by his lectures. And that is when I decided to read up more on Russian history, and I decided to write a paper for my internal assessment. And then I went to him, and he was like, he was very surprised to know that there was somebody still interested in Russian history. So he told me that I'm really surprised to know that. So after that, when I started my MPhil under him, it was amazing as to how much of space he would actually allow me to have in writing my thesis, doing my chapters the way I wanted to. And on almost all my meetings, I would have something in mind, and I would just walk up to him and discuss. I always thought that I have read something and I would discuss that with him, but he would actually feed in so many more ideas into my mind that the moment I would walk out of his room, I would be like, it was so hard to remember everything that he had told me. So when I was writing my MPhil, he was regarding my methodology. He said that Shaptadipa, strictly speaking, the methodology that you're following is not really a methodology. So, but there's some meaning in the work that you're trying to do. So that is the kind of space that he allowed me to have. And he always had something good to say about everything that I wrote, no matter how bad those essays were, no matter how horrid the translations were. So he would always say that, okay, fine, the finesse is not there. You have to just work on it. You can develop these ideas. But he had something so good to say about almost everything that I wrote, or all the ideas that I had. And he would even say that, Shaptadipa, you always surprise me with what you come up with. So, and I used to feel so happy, hearing those words from him. And I remember that when I was appearing for my College Service Commission interview, he was in Sweden at that time. I had written to him that, sir, I'll have my interview in a few days' time. This is what I've decided on. I've decided to give a demonstration on the emancipation of serfs in Russia. And he was like, topic is perfectly all right, but you have to be prepared for questions like, whether you can take up European history and Indian history as well. So that was the kind of concern that he had for me. I mean, what kind of questions I could have possibly encountered at the interview. And from the moment that I got into teaching from 2017 onwards, I got so involved in it. I had all my scripts and correcting them and everything. He actually told me that, Shaptadipa, I don't expect you to write something fantastic. But I want you to write something that you can be proud of. I really don't know how proud I can be or I can make him, because this journey without him is going to be very difficult. I'm actually in the middle of nowhere, but I really hope to complete my PhD, and I don't know how to do it without him, and who's going to go through my translations and who's going to help me with that. I really don't know, but somehow I'll have to do it, because I'll always remain his last PhD student, so forever. So that is what my association has been with Sir. So he was more like a godfather to me. So in the last phone call that I had with him, he said that, Shaptadeepa, I'm like your godfather, because I have to ensure that the clock keeps ticking so that you don't lose focus. So he would always keep telling me about things that were happening around, like the book fair, what kind of discussions were happening on anarchism, because Russia was the theme this year, and I was like sitting with all the scripts. I was correcting scripts at that time. So this one thing that I really miss and feel is that maybe I could have had so many more meetings with him, so many more discussions. There could have been, and like Mrinalini highlighted, like the quick reading thing. So he would just sit with all the chapters together, and he liked to have them in hard copy. So he would sit with all the chapters together, and he would just go through those chapters, and the kind of questions that he would ask me, that why is your first chapter in the first place? So I actually had some planning in my mind when I did my chapters, but then he actually made me delve deeper into those questions. Like, you have to connect your chapters all the more. So I think whatever I've learned, writing papers, how to write an academic paper, what to look at, how to write good book reviews, it's all because of Sir. I'm really indebted to him, and thank you, ma'am, for having me here. And please do, I'm always there for anything that you would need me to do, anytime. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mrinalini.
Yeah, best of luck with your PhD. As I
Thank
said,
you.
I think my father managed to make so many people write their PhDs. I'm sure yours also will. In fact,
I really hope so.
Like there's Kanchana here who finished her PhD. She was talking about how she was a late student, etc.
Anyway, there are lots of Haris, really, really close people with whom he made the history department his home for all his career. Among them, Ratnabali, Hakuda, Kingshuk, Shobhik. If you all would like, I know that wherever he went in the world, Calcutta University was the place that still drew him back. And Kingshuk knows that even when he joined other places, his once a week at Calcutta University or twice a week was something that was just part of his life. So please, those of you who would like to speak. And Kingshuk, of course, has been my rock in these most difficult times. Kingshuk has helped me stand up, carry on. I'll remain eternally grateful to him. But beyond that, Shobhik, Kingshuk, Hakuda, if you'd like, all of you, please, and any others. I can't see everybody here.
Before Kingshuk speaks, I would really like Kingshuk to speak. I was in touch with him regularly during the most difficult period that my sister went through. Oh, all of us went through, actually. He was really like a son that Hari never had, but he was so kind, so generous with his time and with his, he did such a lot for us. I will never be able to sort of express in words our debt to him. Kingshuk, তুমি একটা কিছু বলো।
What to say? You don't have to recount repeatedly the little that I could do for all of you at that point of time. It was just, I suppose, my way of coming to terms with his absence. It's been a very difficult few months. I have hardly anyone to speak to now about things that used to excite us. I was remembering the occasions when he would actually not physically be around. when he went to Jamia, for instance, I used to, whenever I would write something, I would give him a call and say, please check your mail, because otherwise there was no telling when he would end up checking them. It was a remote supervision. I did my MPhil while he was in Delhi for all practical purposes. It was remote supervision, but well, every time I ended up in Delhi during that period, he would make a point of meeting me every day while I was in Delhi for around 9 or 10 days that I would manage. And it used to be like as if he was never out of the city, as if we were meeting on our regular weekly jaunts. And most of the time it was at IIC, and he introduced me to the lemon tarts of the IIC, which both of us had great appreciation of. There was also that occasion when he fractured his leg. And even with a fractured leg, with a crutch, he was trotting off faster than I was, hopping all around Delhi. Sometimes just to meet me, he would come all the way from Jamia over to the central part of Delhi or the northern part of Delhi, which is where I used to stay. I also remember the time when he was going to Jamia. He was, I don't know, maybe there was some part of him which was keen on going to Delhi, but there was some part of him which was uncertain about what happens to Calcutta University or his role in Calcutta University after that. He was actually reflective about whether he had contributed much to Calcutta University. And I remember, I think Madhumita Di and I were having a cup of coffee with him
Yes.
at one of the coffee places on Elgin Road. Do you remember the name, Madhumita Di, of that branch?
It was a new place, King Shuk, and I remember us visiting that, and also
Java.
yes,
Aqua Java.
Aqua Java, yes.
Aqua Java. Ask me.
Shraddha also went with us on occasion there.
Yeah. So I remember we had this discussion. I was telling him, I was trying to assure him that he did a fantastic job teaching Russian history. And I said that when I go to my class trying to talk about 19th century Russia, and I try to sort of draw up that word portrait you did for us, how the rivers would freeze over and nothing would move from Moscow to St. Petersburg for about 6 months. I am perfectly certain I never managed to do it. And I remember him saying, yeah, that's probably because you never saw the bloody ice. So you need to be there, you need to see it, to be able to visualize it so well. And then he said, and I remember him telling Madhumita Di, well, at least doing everything in vain. There was someone listening to what I was saying in my class. Again, he had that kind of withdrawal symptom when he was returning from Maulana Azad to Calcutta University. Calcutta University was his home, but Maulana Azad Institute was very near to his second home. He nursed that with great care. And I remember for the last 6 months or 8 months, when he knew his clock there was ticking and he was required to go back to the university, sometimes he used to be in the dumps. And he had his assistant, Priyanka, who from time to time would ring me up and tell me that why don't you drop in one of these days? Sir seems to be slightly downcast once again. I happened to be in Salt Lake once a week for a very long time. That used to be one of those periods. So I used to drop in and we used to have nice and cozy chat. By the time we returned to the institute, he used to be in a better frame of mind, that he was merely moving from one part of the city to another. And as all of you have been testifying to his generosity, even after he left Maulana Azad and the next director came in, and I'm assuming the next director is not one of the people present here, and undid many of the things that he did in the Maulana Azad Institute. He went on responding to a lot of things that she required of him. I used to ask him, how can you go back and help a person who has been doing this thing, who has been undoing what you are doing? And is there, well, how does that matter? The point is, if she needs my help, it's nothing personal, it's the institution that matters. So if the institution calls for my service, it is, I'm always there. And to my great surprise, that even under the present dispensation, people there found space for him. They would at least have him over once in a while for a cup of coffee, maybe, just to discuss something that they needed. That is a kind of testament to the person he was in his own way. I haven't seen anyone like him. I think you said Raj Chandravarkar used to speak of him as Vishwamitra. I used to think of him as Ajat Shatru. He's a person who never spoke badly of anyone, as Shobhikda was recounting only the other day. He would find a kind word to say about Hitler if he was put to the task. And I have come across very few people, I have come across a few, but very few people who speak less than nicely about him. But the number of people who remember him fondly, who remember with a little degree of positivity about the wonderful person he used to be, that I think is the bit that one should cherish. He was certainly among the wisest persons that I have come across. He used to move around town as if he had wings on his heels. I used to tell him a lot of times, sir, please slow down a little. You don't need to rush around all the time. Please slow down a little. I really wish he did not slow down this much, this early. There was a lot more of his company that we could have had. A lot more of his company that I would have wanted. Well, I think that's it.
Yes.
That's all I have to say. Thank you.
If I may add just one sentence to what King Shuk has said. I didn't know this person. My sister knows him. I'd refrain from mentioning his name. A particular person who was less than kind to Hari wrote a glowing obituary about him. I just thought I'll mention this. That's all.
Okay. Now the mystery deepens.
The
We don't
mystery
know.
deepens. We need.
Okay. Who next? Shobhik. Would Shobhik like to speak?
Shobhik, Bhakuka, Podhumika Mashi, Ratnabuli. There are quite a few people from the.
Papati, am I audible?
Yes.
I have nothing much to add. It is a great loss for everybody, and it has left with me a kind of inui. And I cannot express myself, particularly I am not very conversant about expressing my feelings in English, which is a kind of foreign language for me. So let me express myself through a song, because sir used to love listening songs, particularly in the last Teacher's Day. He actually sang a song, and whenever there was such kind of occasions, students, they used to cajole me for singing a song, and sir used to love those songs. So with your permission, though it is a very, very academic sort of thing, but I want to sing a song.
Please do. Please.
Through this song, I want to express my feelings. It is a Ravindra Sangeet. জীবন মরণের সীমানা ছাড়ায় বন্ধু হে আমার রয়েছো দাঁড়ায় জীবন মরণের সীমানা ছাড়ায় বন্ধু হে আমার হে মোর হৃদয়ের বিজন আকাশে তোমার মহান আলোকে ঢাকাশে গভীর কি আশায় নিবিড় পুলকে তাহারো পানে চাই দুবাহু বাড়ায় জীবন মরণের সীমানা ছাড়ায় বন্ধু হে আমার নীরব নিশিতব চরণ নিছায়ে আধারকে শোভার দিয়েছে বিছায়ে আজিয়ে কোন গান নিখিল প্লাবিতা তোমার বিনা হতে আসিল না বিয়া ভুবন মিলে যায় সুরের রণনে গানের বেদনায় যাই যে হারায় জীবন মরণের সীমানা ছাড়ায় বন্ধু হে আমার রয়েছ দাঁড়ায় জীবন মরণে। এর থেকে ভালোভাবে আর আমি স্যারকে শ্রদ্ধা জানাতে পারতাম না। সবাইকে ধন্যবাদ।
থ্যাংক ইউ। রত্নাবলীদি বলবেন?
খুব ভালো গেয়েছো সৌগী।
I'm sorry, but I can't even get it. I find it very difficult. I mean, I can only follow. So I don't think I'm able to speak anything except to let you know that I really, after a long time, felt that I was, and we were.
রত্নাদি শান্তিনিকেতনে তো কানেকশনটাও খুব খারাপ আজকে।
কিন্তু মনে হচ্ছে আমরা সবাই একসঙ্গে আছি, সেটা কিন্তু খুব ভালো লাগছে আমার।
মধুমিতা মাসি,
মধুমিতা আর ভাকু, আই থিংক হ্যাঁ
এক্স্যাক্টলি ইয়েস।
ভাকুদা আগে যাক, আমি তারপরে আসছি।
সে যাবে, ঠিক আছে।
হ্যাঁ, ভাকুদা কোথায়?
He has to unmute himself. That is the
Is he there?
He's going to come to the rescue.
মধুমিতা তুমি শুরু করো।
Okay.
আসবে হ্যাঁ।
All I want to say is that, you know, even while I'm hearing all of you speak, I can hear Hari's voice. Hey, listen, MM. You know, that conversation, the last one that I had with him, still rings in my ears. And all I want to say is that, Hari, thank you for being a very critical presence in my life in more ways than one. Because I think that Hari made me what I am by making me self-aware in many different ways. Self-aware about my hybrid identity, the part Malayali that I am. Self-aware about my possibilities and limitations as a scholar. Self-aware about the academic context in which I grew up and was operating in. I had no idea about how Calcutta's academia was structured. Hari was almost an anthropologist, he was an ethnographer. He was, of course, a historian, but the understanding of kinship, of patronage, of networks, and how one could navigate those with a sense of, sometimes he used to tell me that, Madhumita, you have to face these things and, find yourself in the way you are. You can't be like everybody else. Your situation is different. You've gone through different kinds of experiences, which people don't go through always. And I think those were life lessons for life that I got from him. And in spite of the fact that I knew Hari as this cosmopolitan who was so much at ease in every single context, cutting across class, cutting across region, ethnicity, all of that, Hari said, Madhumita, there are also times when I feel like the perpetual outsider. And I kind of feel that sometimes I also feel that way. There was a kind of sense in which I find myself as a perpetual outsider everywhere. But Hari was able to accept all of that with a kind of equanimity that I found absolutely rare. And I think I'm grateful for having met such a person in my life. My parents couldn't have been given me the kind of lessons I got from him, because my parents came from a different context, their life was different. But, Hari actually made me become an adult in many ways. So I think all that I have to say is thank you, Hari, thank you, Taputidi, and thank you for being part of this family. So, and it's a wonderful opportunity to be hearing about Hari from all of you. And hopefully we will keep his memory alive in whatever way we can. There's a bit of Hari that will be in us forever. So thank you.
Thank you, Madhumita. I think Bhaku, being one of Hari's oldest and closest friends, just fitting that he should actually now round this up. Bhaku, tumi kichu bolo.
If there's anybody who still otherwise wants to speak also, we are going to be sitting here. I know this is a very long session, but it's the only time.
Moni has come, she can unmute.
Yes.
Moni has come to unmute, yeah. So he can say this and then we can, maybe Minka, you can read out what Ananya has sent in the chat box. And I just hope we meet sooner than later.
In case also Shromunda, Bodhida, or Rohanda, any of you want to say anything, please. As I said, there's so many people here and we'd ideally like to just, be able to listen to everybody, but we're also, of course, running out of time. But do let us know in case you want to say anything. Bhaku Kaku otherwise should, of course, take over.
So can you hear me?
Yes, great. We can.
Actually, I met Hari many years ago, towards the close of the 1970s. And we spent a lot of time together in the university. I worked with him in many of his projects and also acted as a member of the council when he was the director of the Makayas. And all of his students have recounted their experiences with one of the great teachers of our time. I can add to this by recounting our period of excitement. In the late 70s and 80s, when Calcutta University, a small room in the Hajra Road campus, was studded with people who would hit the headlines a decade later. Lakshmi was there, of course. And there were many others who did not actually fear Amolus Tripauthi's frowning eyes to shout. And we shouted. And Hari was a person who didn't. He was always very soft-spoken. And when we moved to Alipur, because I'm not actually taking you to those years when we literally worked as coolies to set up a library, the library assistant to find out from the catalogs the books that we are going to acquire. So, but our life in the 1980s was pretty exciting. And I can say that the discussion that we had, in which frequently people who came from outside as visiting fellows would join. I recall Sumit Sarkar sitting in that room, Mushir Al-Hassan and others. We didn't have much facilities. A few chairs, a few tables. Some of these chairs had tattered backrests. So despite all those limitations, we had a very creative time. Of course, there were people like Rudrangshu Mukherjee who would actually try to dominate the show, but we enjoyed it thoroughly. We had eating sessions. A huge pot of mutton chop would come from dhaba with rotis, and we will relish it. So these are things which do not usually come under the purview of people talking about an academic's great achievements in the academic life. But for us, who have seen what academic life is, these are things which are important. And one great thing about this memorial meeting is that I saw a few faces who had many years ago had sat in my classroom, but who have become old. I can see Sudipto Sen, Sujandana Chatterjee, Indra has left. But these were people whom I saw very young, vibrant kids. Soman Mukherjee. Soman Mukherjee, of course, was much younger than Indra or Sudipto. So, and they are actually aware of what life was in Calcutta University at that time. We did not offer great facilities, but we tried to compensate with a certain kind of pedagogy, which I think very few institutions in those days managed to provide, despite our many limitations. And as we are all approaching the end of our agony, we shall certainly remember the period of great vibrancy. Well, it was a vibrant culture that of which we were very important parts. It is glad to see Saptadipa, one of the youngest research students of Hari, and with Kingshuk, Joya, the oldest. Hari has given a lot academically. He has been an inspiration. I have been his student, even though I was a colleague when I was actually dragged to teach European history. I had to read with him the domestic history of Germany, on which I knew nothing. But I was asked to take over a large component of the European history course. And the only option, of course, was to read with him the literature that he was actually asking me to consult. And that was how I tried to enrich myself with knowledge that he gave us. And Madhumita, Kingshuk, and others also attended my classes on European history, Indra Sengupta. So it's time to look back to that period. It's time to look back to our many pleasant evenings in his Anand apartment flat in Southern Avenue, our trips to places like Bombay and then to Ajanta Ellora, and Tapu will remember fondly the Ajanta trip. Joya smiling. Joya knows why I am referring to Ajanta Ellora as one of the great turning points in Hari's life. These are interesting. Lakshmi also is partly familiar, although he didn't go there. These are things which students do not know, but these are things which are inscribed in your memory in such a way that when we get away from academics, we get away from books, we get away from the books that we don't anymore wish to read. These are the memories which actually keep us alive, keep us still, keep us vibrant in a world which is weighted against us in many ways. Thank you.
Thanks, Bhaku.
Should we any more
Any
people,
person
or
wants to
otherwise
speak?
we of course round up with Onunna has written a very nice poem, so I would read that out. But of course,
Does
right at the
anybody
end,
else want to
in
speak?
case anybody else,
Please come.
otherwise.
Just unmute yourself.
Onunna has actually, Onunna has got a very nice excerpt from a poem actually by Pushkin.
Oh yes.
So I think it's very befitting. Yeah, very befitting. So maybe Minka can read it out if nobody else wants to speak.
Yes. But if anybody wants to speak, please, we are waiting. You have to just unmute yourself and say. It would be nice to end both with the poem, song. I don't know whether Rukmini is around, but
I think we'll make do with the poem.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think you should read the poem. Yeah.
Okay, do that. So, Alexander Pushkin, Feast During the Plague. A friend and colleague, a man we all knew well, he who by jest and witty storytelling, sharp observation, cutting repartees, so acid in their strange and solemn humor, enlightened our glum table conversation, and chased away the dark which presently the plague, our uninvited guest, has cast upon our best and brightest brilliant minds.
it reminds me
I think it's
of one
nice note on which to end this.
reminds me of one line that Madhavan Palat wrote on how this virus took away the very best among us. So I was just reminded of that one.
I think on that note, I actually also want to say that this has been a deeply moving experience for me. For once, the Wi-Fi has been okay. And it was nice to see all of you, hear all of you. And I really feel in a strange way, after a long time, I've been able to actually feel a sense of joy recalling Hari, because it's been very hard. Every day I sort of, sometimes it's a dream, sometimes I think about it, sometimes it's been very difficult to reconcile with this loss. But today, I think after a long time, it's going to be 4 months, I actually feel a sense of joy celebrating his life. So I can only say thank you for all, for being here and speaking and coming together. And I hope we can all meet physically, and see each other. I think this awful COVID has magnified all the problems that we faced. So I want to thank you on my part. I just want to thank all of you. And yeah, it was wonderful.
Lakshmi, I was wondering if Hari's brother Ravi would like to.
He's also there. There's actually lots of other family, friends, and relatives like Niharika Gupta.
Niharika didn't want to speak.
Yeah, okay. So then whoever
Ravi wants to speak. I wanted to just say one thing, which is about two things that we would like to begin for Hari. And I say we because they have to be collective endeavors. One is something we've already begun. Dada has has bought a web domain which will be dedicated to Hari. And I am
in the process
of content collection for that website. I spoke to Kingshuk and Shobhik about it. Dada knows about it, Ravi knows about it. I have a research assistant who's not the most up and about, but nonetheless, let's see. So one of the things we are looking for is bringing together, I want the website to be about the living person, not about the person who's gone. So yes, tributes, obituaries will be there. I wanted as much of Hari's writings. His writings are scattered. Some of the books are with me. I will be making PDFs. I want help with collecting his newspaper writings. Hari wrote at different times in particularly 1992, fall of the Soviet Union. He was writing quite regularly. He wrote again during the centenary of the revolution. He wrote on the NCRT controversy. So one is that. But particularly, as I've told Kingshuk and Shobhik, Hari was a good speaker. All of you will certify that he had amazing clarity when he spoke. I'm looking for audio recordings of lectures, video recordings if we can get. So Choi, I'll write to, particularly things abroad. So these are things we are trying to collect. Of course, photographs. Lots and lots of people have been sharing both personal and professional photographs with me. Kanchana, Shuchandana, Rashmi Doraiswamy from Jamia, Raghavan from ICWA. But I'm asking everybody to also collect photographs and send them so that the website can keep growing. Hari curated 2 exhibitions, one in IIC, one that Shuchandana knows about. It would be lovely to get photographs of those. Lovely to recreate one of them if we can, but I don't know that we can. So that's one initiative. The other is something that Ravi, Lakshmi, we've thought about. Lakshmi has already instituted a prize today, an essay prize for Hari. Hari's Sharda Verma, I don't know whether she listened. She's 96 years old. She's Hari's aunt and actually like his godmother, first women psychiatrist of India, extremely broken by what has happened. Hari was not just the nephew, Hari was like her son. She wants to start an endowment. I want to put in some money for something that will keep different things going. And it's not just a memorial lecture, but different things we can think. So I like to form a small trust. And we can think of pooling whatever money that different people, I know that Veliamma and I, we want to put something towards it. Lakshmi's already done. And, different things we can do with the endowment. Veliamma wants it to be located in Calcutta and in the department. Now, I don't know what the future of the department is again, but nonetheless, I'll let I'll let the plan grow. But the one thing, we were all denied is really getting together for Hari. Hari was such a people's person. He never liked all the Zoom, etc. He preferred to pick up the phone and talk, as you know, and have long, long, long conversations with everybody. He would spend the morning during lockdown talking to people. And if there were 80 plus, the conversations were longer. Really long conversations he would have. So I would like next year for all of us to get together. And I don't know when that can be, but I think the best occasion would be his birthday. I don't think I'd ever like to mark the day he disappeared from my life, because for us it's unreal. I saw him off at a hospital door and I never saw him again. So 15th February is what I would like to have a gathering for him with the kind of songs he loved and huge eclecticism in the music he liked. Rukmini and Mrinali songs for Hari, which were of different kinds. So music and remembrances, but let's see. So I cannot let him go. He fills up too much of my life. I know he would want me to carry on with mine, but I never realized how much of my life he filled up till the shock of the news that he was no more. So I can see that in the coming year, I'll live with Hari more and more. And I'd like to thank all of you for being with us today. Many, many people whose faces I haven't seen in a very long time. Some people like Shaptadeepa, who I'm delighted to meet. Others from a very long time I haven't seen, like Bodhi, like Rohan, Shromon. Haven't had the chance to speak to many of you. But please be with me, because please be with Mrinalini and me in remembering Hari. And I'd just like to say that there's a photograph I shared of Mrinalini at Konark Temple, where Hari seems to be giving her a little lecture. She was 2 years old then. I'd just like to say that today Mrinalini took one of the first classes ever in her life.
No, I've taken a few classes in between, but yeah, it was.
Yeah, she did a class with students of Jindal University on editing and publishing and on the history of Marg. And I thought, well, that would have made Hari really delighted, because we wanted an academic career for her. She went her own way, but I think she would have made her father very proud today. That's it.
That's a nice piece of news, and I think on that note of we're all proud of Hari's daughter too. So on that note, I think I want to thank all of you. Thanks, Indu, for setting up the Zoom. It was
Thank you.
It came in very useful, and it was uninterrupted. And if the recording is done, maybe you can share it with all of us.
Yes. Absolutely.
Thank you, Lakshmi Dee. Thank you, Tapati and Minka,
Thanks,
and Indu. Very much. So.
Thank you for taking so much time. And stay safe, and I'm sure we'll all meet soon. Yeah. So thank you again. Thanks for everything.
Thank you, Lakshmi.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm signing off.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye, Tapu. I'll be in touch with you.
Yes.
I'll be in touch with
and
you.
all of you.
Thank you so much,
Sure.
Lakshmi and Tapati. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my
And
pleasure.
Tapati, Mrinalini, and Lakshmi, speak.
I am.
Bye-bye.
I didn't know how time just flew.
Yes.
Okay.
Hmm.